Hi everyone, welcome back for the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron Level 2 cruising course up to Kawau and Module 3 vessel identification. So if we look at a typical boat, we generally have a green light on the starboard side, and that light will be visible for 112.5 degrees. Now don't get too hung up on the angles. That's really good if you can remember those. But the important thing to remember is that that green light is only visible from in front of the boat, and from the side it's not visible from behind because the visible arc that is set, and there's a specific reason for that. We have a red light on the port side, and we'll also have a white light on the stern. So this is a sailing boat with just a green on starboard side, a red on the port side, and a white stern light. If we're a power boat, we need to show a white light on a mast as well, which is visible from in front. So the steaming light is just for power boats. When we start our engines, we're a power boat and we need to put our steaming light on. We can't pretend to be a sailing boat, even if we've got our sails up. If our engine is running, we need to declare that we are in fact a power boat at that point. So let's consider viewing the vessel from the side. What can we see? As I alluded to earlier, we can only really see that green light on a sailing boat, or the white light if it's a power boat. We won't be able to see the stern light, and we won't be able to see the port light because of that arc of visibility. If we look at a boat from the stern, then we're only going to see the white light. So we won't be able to tell whether it's a power boat or a sailing boat. We're just going to see that white light. And if we view at it from the bow, well, what can we see? We can see both the green, red and white light we can see. So if we're a power boat, we'll be able to identify. If we're a sailing boat, we'll be able to identify. But the green and the red, if we see them both, then that's a boat coming towards us. So let's have a look to see how this looks at night. So here we have a green and red light, and this is simply a sailing boat that's coming towards us. I know it's a sailing boat that's coming towards us because I can see both the green and the red. I'm looking at both sides from the bow. And of course, if it was a power boat, it would have a white light. It would look like this. So that's a power boat, like a launch, or a sailing boat which has got its engine running and it's coming straight towards us. If it's a power boat, like a launch, it could be going quite fast. If it's a sailing boat, it's probably not going very fast. So sailing vessels would typically, maximum of 10 knots really. Power boat could be doing 25, 30 knots. So it's useful to identify whether a boat is under power or under sail. And all of these lights are not designed to trick us. It's just a simple way of figuring out what aspect of the boat are we looking at, and is it a power boat or is it a sailing boat? What activity is it doing? Do I need to give way? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves, and we're going to explore that further now. So here, what can we see? Well, I can see a green light. So that's the starboard side of a vessel, and I can see a white light. So that's the starboard side of a power boat, and it's heading from left to the right. I know it's going from left to right because that's the starboard side of the vessel. Let's have a look at this one. So here we go, same thing again, starboard side of a power boat. I know that. But if it's got an extra light on it, a red one just below the steaming light, well, that's something else. Yes, it is the starboard side of a power-driven boat, but it's actually a pilot vessel. So a pilot vessel is a boat that goes out to meet the really big ships that come into the port, and the pilot will get off that boat and get onto the big ship, and they will help that big ship navigate its way into the port. So it's a really useful vessel to spot, because it generally means there's a big boat either coming in or leaving the port, and it would be really useful to know that information. So I'm always on the lookout for this vessel, and the way I remember the lights is that you'd think the harbour pilot, you'd think that would be someone that was really experienced. So they've probably got grey hair, and unfortunately he's probably got a red face and is a bit grumpy because all of the boaties not knowing the rules. So grey hair, red face, that's the pilot, and he's on duty, and he's out there to guide a big ship either in or out of the port. Really useful to spot. We definitely don't want to get tangled up with a big ship. That's a port side, because I can see the red light. And it's a power driven boat, because there's a white light up there on the mast. So yeah, power driven boat, because it's the port side. I know that's the left hand side of the boat, so it must be going from right to left. And if there's an extra light, two extra lights in this case, red, white, red, that's something else. And in particular, this power-driven vessel is restricted in its ability to maneuver. Now, we as sailors need to give way to this vessel. Power normally would give way to sail, but the give way rules are based on the ability of that vessel to maneuver. Normally, sailing boats need to consider the water depth because of the length of the keel, and they need to consider the wind direction. Power boats probably consider those things as well, but to a lesser extent, and are generally more manoeuvrable than a sailing boat. So that's why power boats generally would give way to a sailing boat. But if that vessel is engaged in some kind of activity which makes its manoeuvrability difficult, or perhaps there's a malfunction on the boat, they can put these extra lights on, and they are asking us to give way to it. And in fact, the law requires us to give way to vessels that are restricted in their ability to manoeuvre. So here, anybody that lives in Auckland would probably be quite familiar to this site. We have a port side of a power-driven vessel, but this vessel in particular has a flashing yellow light, and usually that would be a ferry. So it's actually a vessel which is operating in light displacement mode and is deemed able to, or suitable anyway, to break the speed limit in the harbour. So from the Auckland Harbour Bridge to North Head, there's a 12 knot speed limit. The ferries are legally allowed to break that speed limit, but they have to be having a yellow flashing light on the boat to do that. So that's warning us that the boat could be exceeding the speed limit for everybody else. Typically in Auckland, that's a ferry. It could be a different vessel, but the only other vessel I've seen to have a flashing yellow light on it is Team New Zealand's hydrogen-powered chase boat. I haven't seen a flashing yellow light on any other vessel out there. So in Auckland, it's going to be a ferry probably. Other parts of the world, it could be something else. Under maritime law, a flashing yellow light on a power boat means that that vessel is allowed to break the speed limit, and it could be travelling quite fast. So here we have the port side of a power-driven vessel, but this power-driven vessel has an extra white light. 2 white lights means that it's a vessel engaged in towing, and in particular that this is a short tow. So that's not more than 200 meters. If we have 3 white lights, well, that's a long tow. So that's a tow in excess of 200 meters, and it could be up to 2 miles. They vary the length of the tow rope by to make the passage easier, so to sit the barge and the tug in nicely in the wave or swell pattern. So a tug towing a barge, and in particular with its 3 lights, the barge is a long way behind, and then we've got the port side of it. And because it's the port side, it's travelling from right to left, so that barge is probably out to the right somewhere. Now this vessel, really because of its activity, could well be displaying additional lights as well. And if we remember back a couple of slides, red, white, red means restricted in manoeuvrability. So just because a vessel is engaged in towing doesn't necessarily mean it's restricted in its ability to manoeuvre, but if they decide to put these lights on as well, often referred to as RAM, just an acronym for restricted ability to manoeuvre, they are experiencing difficulty controlling the tug and the boat, the vessel behind that they're towing. So we need to give way if the restricted ability to manoeuvre is displayed. So here we have a situation which is quite dangerous. So it's a stern light of a vessel engaged in towing. So that tug that's towing that barge will have a stern light that looks like a white and a yellow. We won't necessarily know how long the length of tow is because we won't be able to see those 3 white lights or the 2 white lights that indicate whether it's a short or a long tow because they face forwards. So we're behind the tug, and that is a particularly scary situation to be in, and we need to be asking ourselves, where is the tow? Somewhere behind that tug is something that's being towed along, a barge probably. Between the barge and the tug is a big thick cable, and we need to know where that barge is, as we do not want to drive between the two. There should be lights on the vessel that's being towed, but maybe you haven't seen that yet. Okay, so let's have a look at this boat that's towing something. So here we have a boat here, and on its stern we've got 2 lights. Now I'm using a whiteboard, which is really difficult to show colours of lights, but we've got a yellow and a white stern light. So that is a vessel that's towing something. We don't know what it's towing, but somewhere over here is something being towed, and we have found ourselves in this position. Now that's a very dangerous situation to be in, because somewhere over here is another barge or something, and it could be a long tow. Let's say the wind and the tide is that way. So there's the wind, there's the tide. So the barge has blown over here, and there's a cable going from the tug to the barge. That could be the situation we're in. Or maybe the barge is down here and the wind and the tide are the other way. Either way, we need to turn towards the stern light. It may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but if we've identified a vessel that's towing something and we don't know where the vessel is that's being towed, then if we turn towards the vessel that's doing the towing and keep turning and sail away from it, then we'll be away from the vessel that's being towed, If we turn the other way, we're going to have a bit of a problem. Maybe not here, maybe over here. I'm not quite sure where. We don't know where this is. Very dangerous situation. This vessel that's being towed should have some lights on it. And it may well be that if we look back, we'll be able to identify this. But if we can't find it, make sure you turn towards the stern light and keep turning and sail away from it. We don't want to be sailing between a tug and a barge. That's not going to be very pretty for our boat, and probably us on it as well. So, dangerous situation. The important thing is, yellow over white is the stern of a tug and it's towing. We don't know how long the tow cable is. We don't know what's towing. And if we haven't seen the white lights, or they may well have the port and starboard lights as well. So if we haven't seen the navigational lights on the barge, we need to be very careful. Definitely don't proceed past the stern of a vessel that's towing. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so just a couple more lights to look at. So single white light. It could be a number of different things. It could be a stern light, as we've already discovered. If this one is quite high though, it's probably an anchor light of a small vessel. It would be a 360-degree light on top of the mast. It could also be a rowing boat though. You know, someone rowing with a torch. It could be a small sailing boat that's less than 7 meters in length. Or it could be a small powerboat, less than 7 meters in length, and not capable of exceeding 7 knots of boat speed. And if we think about it a little bit further, as white light travels further than the red and the green lights, this could be a powerboat that's coming towards us, but it's so far away that we can't see the red and the green lights yet. So a white light, a single white light, is one to keep an eye on. It could be a number of different things, neither of which should be particularly dangerous, but it's something that we want to keep an eye on, and as we get closer to it, we might be able to ascertain what exactly it is and then take avoiding action. Hi, just one last one to go, and this is 2 white lights. So if you're a large vessel over 50 meters in length, you have to have a light on the bow and on the stern. If you're bigger than that, say up to 100 meters long, you need all of the lights in between on as well. So you've got a light on the bow, all the deck lights on, and 1 light on the stern. And that's to make sure that the boat is really visible and everyone can see the bow and the stern, so no one tries to sail, you know, thinking that they've got room around the back and then finding that the ship is bigger than they thought it was. I say probably because this is an option on smaller boats. So if you have a smaller vessel, you can have a light on the bow and on the stern, but if it's big, if it's more than 50 meters, it has to have a light on the bow and on the stern, and if you're more than 100 meters, you have to have all the lights on in between. So with that, that completes module 3, and I look forward to seeing you in module 4. Have a go at the quiz though, because the quiz I think is going to be really important, just to be able to remember all of those light sequences. And one of the things is to try and build up. So what side can we see? Can we see the port side or the starboard side? Can we see them both? Is it a powerboat? What sort of activity are they doing? And then have a think about what that means. If we're looking at the starboard side, then which direction is the boat going in? If we look at the whole picture, it can be quite confusing. If we look at individual lights, we say, okay, green light's the starboard side. White light, powerboat, oh, it's got these other ones, so that means something else is going on. And it might be enough just to say, well, I'm not getting anywhere near it. Okay, with that, I'll see you in module 4.